Alright, Joe here, welcome back to We Need to Talk. This is of course the show that looks at football on the internet over the past 7 days. 7 days that's seen Gareth Bale mug off Madrid. One Spurs fan absolutely loving the Mourinho appointment.
I'm very happy. Energy. I wonder why. Energy. Mourinho. Hello. Welcome to Tottenham.
And some supporters nearly getting killed by a rogue penalty. Anyway, this week we need to talk about Mauricio Pochettino. Mauricio Pochettino has left Tottenham Hotspur. Jose Mourinho has taken over. This to me proves we're living in an alternative reality. Did you ever think you'd see photos like these? But what did happen to Poch? Well, there's been a number of reports this week talking about the inside story of his exit. So I've brought all of those reports together into one video to summarise the whole bloody affair. Now there is the obvious, 25 points from 24 games. They haven't won away since January, and we talk more about the results side of things on this week's Sunday Vibe. So if you're interested in that, wait till Sunday and tune in then. Today, I'm talking about what was going on behind the scenes, behind closed doors with Poch, Levy and his squad. I want to rewind the clock back to May 2018 when Tottenham have just beaten Leicester 5-4 to seal third place in the Premier League, guaranteeing Champions League football, and all of this ahead of a move into their new stadium. Now everybody else would have been buzzing about this situation. Everybody except Pochettino. Pochettino was actually very worried. The Telegraph claimed this week that in that very window, after that game, he talked to Levy about selling Jan Vertonghen, Toby Alderweireld, Danny Rose, Christian Eriksen, all of which were refusing to sign new contracts at that time. In fact, Poch even said after that very game, we need to talk next week to create a new project. In this situation, you have to be brave and to take risks. Clearly, he wanted to rebuild and refresh, which is something that didn't happen. None of those key players left the club, and they signed absolutely nobody. Now somehow Daniel Levy managed to team up with Harry Kane and convince Mauricio Pochettino, despite signing nobody and selling nobody, that there was still a forward-thinking vision at Tottenham Hotspur, and managed to convince him so much that he signed a new contract. However, most of the articles this week, and I think everybody can agree, this is kind of where you can start to see cracks showing in a relationship between Poch and Daniel Levy. In fact, at the unveiling of the stadium just a few months later, Poch was at it again, wasn't he? Talking publicly to the press, saying, to be close to the big clubs, you must think like big clubs think. What does it mean to think like a big club? That's what we're going to have to discuss. Clearly, a little underhand dig at Daniel Levy there, saying that they're not a big club yet. Just because they've moved into a big stadium doesn't make them so. And he needs reinforcements, he needs refreshment, and that just wasn't happening. So let's fast forward to 2019 when starts to truly hit the fan. Tottenham are falling apart on the field, but their European form is covering some of the cracks that we were seeing in 2018 behind the scenes, and covering up some of the domestic failings at Tottenham. And this is when Pochettino really used the moment, Tottenham Hotspur in a Champions League semi-final just before the Ajax game, to put out yet another statement that there were still problems there, and you shouldn't ignore them. He said, of course, to win the Champions League with Tottenham with these circumstances, maybe I need to think a little bit, maybe to do something different in the future, that's for sure. Now, at the time, I think some people took that as a bit of a joke, but now we look back on it, maybe he was serious. If he'd have won the Champions League, he probably would have left the club there and then. Now, after losing the Champions League final to Liverpool and somehow scraping into the top four just ahead of Arsenal, Pochettino was absolutely devastated. In fact, he was so devastated that he refused to travel home to London with the squad, instead going to his home in Barcelona. And most of the reports include the word sulking after that loss. And that did not go down well at all with the board, and in particular, Daniel Levy. This reportedly resulted in something of a bitterness between the manager and the chairman because, yet again, Pochettino wanted to clear some of the players out who were running their contract down, the likes of Vertonghen, the likes of Alderweireld, the likes of Christian Eriksen, who publicly effectively stated he was looking for new challenges. None of those players left the club, and only 3 new major faces were brought in: Ndombele, Lo Celso and Ryan Sessegnon. Things were so bad behind the scenes that one dressing room source told The Athletic that Pochettino sulked and sulked his way to the sack. Now, nearly every article features the word sulked, so at some stage you have to just wonder whether the club or the players or somebody within Tottenham Hotspur has briefed the press that Pochettino was having a bit of a sulk. It was this negative energy combined with cracks between Daniel Levy and himself that eventually contributed to what most people would describe as losing the dressing room. I think a better term, in the case of Pochettino and Tottenham, is probably exhausting the dressing room. All of the players seemed physically tired of his methods and, to be fair, mentally tired as well. In fact, there's one quote within that Athletic article that says, "The players were tired of the physical demands of Poch's playing style as it was clear the team had simply stopped pressing." And on the mental side, one quote says, "The place is a regime and the players are sick of him," which is a pretty punchy quote, if I think it's fair to say. If you're a Tottenham fan, you read that players are thinking that, is pretty much the end of any manager. When Pochettino then this season came out and spoke publicly about different agendas within the squad after that loss against Colchester United, things got really bitter behind the scenes. There are reports that players wouldn't even look Pochettino in the eye for fear of being reprimanded on the spot, and to be honest, it just seems a little bit messy. So that brings us to last Wednesday. There's cracks between Pochettino and Levy. Pochettino hasn't got the players he wanted. He hasn't got rid of the players he wanted. Even more importantly, the players are tired. The manager's tired. Everything is all over the place. And this is the moment that Levy allegedly started planning for Pochettino's exit. That was last Wednesday, just when the international break was starting. Now, he initially approached Pochettino and asked if he would be willing to resign. Apparently, Pochettino refused to resign, mainly because he didn't want to leave the club in a bad situation, also because he was probably getting paid out £12.5 million. And why would you turn down £12.5 million when you are eventually going to leave the club anyway? Now, by Monday, some of the players had already found out that Pochettino was going to be sacked by the club, mainly the senior players. And on Tuesday, it was, of course, confirmed. However, some of the players didn't even find out until they saw the club statements, which for me is just crazy. However, like I said, he had lost the dressing room. He was at war with Daniel Levy, and I think he was just tired. One dressing room source told David Ornstein sacking Pochettino was the only decision that made sense. I have to say, I feel sorry for Pochettino. I think he will go on to bigger and better things, but the time might well have been right for the two just to separate. So that was sort of the inside story of some of the problems that have been going on behind the scenes at Tottenham Hotspur. As I said at the start, on the field performance issues we're going to talk about on Sunday Vibes, so make sure you tune in for that. If you want to know where Pochettino might end up, Bayern Munich, head over to Continental Club. That goes live today, actually, I think an hour later. Either way, Pochettino, before you make any rash decisions, just remember Manchester United might come calling eventually. I'm just saying. Keep your options open, please. Moving on to the good, the bad and the ugly. The good is all about the Kosovo fans who held anti-racism banners and joined force with the England supporters to create what is one of the most positive atmospheres I've ever seen at an international friendly. Brilliant to see, and thank God for once we're not talking about international football and negative stories. So Kosovo, well done. The bad this week is all about Glenn Tamplin. Yes, Billericay's finest. You might remember me talking about him last week or a couple of weeks ago, something like that, taking over a new club, Romford, where he has sacked the manager, appointed himself yet again, signed 15 players on the first game and lost 3-2. Great start, Glenn. The ugly this week is all about Mark Sampson because yesterday he was charged with using racist language by the FA. He's got until the 6th of December to dispute the charge. He's, of course, the current boss of Stevenage Town. So what that means for him, what that means for the FA, and whether or not he'll dispute it remains to be seen. Either way, ugly times for Stevenage and ugly times for Mark Sampson. So that's it for this week's episode of We Need to Talk. Like I said earlier, make sure you tune into Continental Club if you want to find out where Pochettino's likely to head. Tune into Sunday Vibes if you want to know more about our thoughts on the Pochettino sacking and the Mourinho hiring. Thanks very much for watching. Auf Wiedersehen.